sign in Toronto.
Our fashion expert, John McKay, is with us today. He's going to teach us how to look like $1 million, no matter what your budget is, with some very specific advice on what looks expensive and why. Also, many of us have some great memories of one of the world's most loved entertainers, Mr. Danny Kaye. You're going to meet Kirk McMahon, who is in a one-man show paying tribute to this great star. And startling statistics show that over the last 20 years, the suicide rate of men has climbed 42%. What accounts for this dramatic rise? We'll find out. Tribute to a star through impersonation is always a very risky business, but my first guest today is so good that it's enough to make you believe in reincarnation. He is a Canadian actor. His name is Kirk McMahon. He is currently starring in a one-man show based on the performances of the very talented, the late Mr. Danny Kaye. His tribute to this legendary performer is being hailed as a theatrical triumph. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kirk McMahon, alias Mr. Danny Kaye.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sing a song right now, but I need your help. When I get to the chorus, I'm going to sing something, and what I would like you to do is to sing it back to me, just like an echo. So, for example, if I was to sing ha-hi-de-hi-de-hi, you would sing ha-hi-de-hi-de-hi back. Well, let's give it a try. Ha-ha-ha-hi-de-hi. Hee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho. Excellent. Here we go. Folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher. She was a low-down hoochie coocher. She was the roughest and the toughest frail, but Minnie had a heart as big as a whale. Ha-ha-ha-hi-de-hi. Ha-ha-hi-de-hi. Hee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho. Elou-fait. Elou-fait. Ouli à sa peur. Ouli à sa peur. Ouvrez la fenêtre, j'ai au sac. Ouvrez la fenêtre, j'ai au sac. She messed around with the king of Sweden. He gave her every little thing that she was needin'. He gave her $1 million and nickels and dimes. She sat around and counted them 1,000,000 times. Ha-ha-ha-hi-de-hi. Hee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho. Ali-ali-ali-ali-ah. Hee-hee. Trosty Sevene. Is Dini Chevena. Lido solo o la guitar. Ilia oto isa. Ilia oto isa. Ole ole. Ole ole. Ole ole ole. Ole ole ole. Get it, got the total to go. The giver is going to say a bit for the barrel. He beat the gallon gun and a second. Go ahead. They sent poor Minnie where they put the crazies. Now poor old Minnie's pushing up the daisies. This ends my story and it ends my song. She was just an old gal, but they done her wrong. Yeah!
Mr. Danny Kaye, Mr. Kirk McMahon, thank you. Have a seat. Is that an actual routine that he did from a movie? Or
that's an old Cab Calloway tune that was written in 1939, and Kaye took it in 1939 and made it his own by doing the different types of gibberish and really extending the kind of audience participation with that.
But so he did not do that whole thing in a movie somewhere, or it's just
in
that...
a movie? No, not that
Okay, but he did
tune.
that on TV and
He did that on stage, and he toured for 20 years with his one-man show, and there's 200 songs that he draws from to do that show, of which we do 20 of them in the show we're doing.
How many movies did he make?
20.
And how many, just give me a list of his credits. 20 movies and...
Okay, he conducted symphony orchestras for years. He worked as the ambassador to UNICEF for 25 years. 20 movies, a couple of made-for-television films. He did The Cosby Show, which was the last thing that he did.
Did lots of nightclub entertaining of that genre?
Yes, he did nightclub entertaining from about 1938 to about 1945.
And was a dancer. I mean, what was he? I mean, if he was best known as a dancer, was it, or an actor, or sort of?
Well, that was the hardest thing to I guess you would call him what is termed as an entertainer, really, because he could sing, he could act, he could dance. He was a comedian.
There aren't many of that. I mean, that sort of faded out. That multi-talented entertainer.
Yes.
People today either sing or they dance, and some sing in it, but that's very rare. But very few actors are singers and dancers and actors and I was going to say humorists. They're not.
Yes. Exactly.
When did you become and I call it an obsession. I gather it's somewhat of a magnificent obsession you have with Danny Kaye?
Yeah, when I worked for Shaw in Stratford, an actor was always looking for something he can really get wrapped up into. And in 1982, when I moved to Toronto, I was told that I bared a striking resemblance to Danny Kaye, and no one had told me that before. And what was really useful, because you would go to auditions and or callbacks, and you would say, "You remember me, the guy who looks like Danny Kaye?" And they go, "Oh, yeah."
Oh,
so
yeah,
that was great. But what happened was...
we don't want that type.
No.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, what do you do?
At least you remembered.
But in '84, I was at the Edinburgh Festival doing a show. I was playing Ratty in The Wind in the Willows. And I discovered that Kaye did this one-man show at the London Palladium in 1948, and then continued to perform it for 20 years. And I happened to be looking for a one-man vehicle. Now, at the time, I didn't think it would become an obsession, because at the time, I didn't even know if I could do it. But it did become an obsession.
Is this show you do the show he did? Is it the same show? You've just taken his one-man show and you're duplicating it?
That's right. Now, over the 20 years, of course, he had the 200 songs to choose from. So he had the opportunity to change and mix it around. And so each show was uniquely different. So, but our show is set in the sense.
You had to get permission from him to do these. You spoke to him. You never met.
That's right.
But you had a lot of correspondence and spoke with him.
It's fascinating. Back in '85, I thought, you know, I would approach Kaye, I would write to him, he would adopt me as his son, I would go down to L.A., I would live in his house, and, you know, Sylvia Fine and Danny Kaye and I would work together, and this is what would happen.
Thank God you weren't obsessed.
But what happened was lawyers talked to lawyers, and it was worked out eventually by 3 years later in '88.
Did you ever have to pay anything to him for making money off of his material, or does he just give you the right to use it?
In this particular case, we have what are called limited rights. So we have the rights to do it in Canada and the UK. We're currently negotiating the rights for the U.S. tour. And at the moment, until the U.S. tour, we don't have to give what you would call a royalty or whatever. But we do pay for the use of the songs.
Okay, that goes to the Danny Kaye estate or wherever. Was he flattered by your impersonation? Were you, or had it happened so many times that he thought, oh no, not another one? Did he want to know how good you were? I mean, how involved?
Yes, I had to send a videotape to show what I did. Sylvia Fine, who that's his wife, she wrote all the 200 songs for him, along with Cab Calloway and Ira Gershwin and Cole Porter. And because she ran his career, we were told right from the beginning that direct all correspondence to her. And so the negotiations went on with her. Now, what we didn't know at the time, and this was about a year before he died, we didn't know he was very, very seriously ill, even at that time. And so that was more the reason why we were directed to correspond with Sylvia.
Well, I would think because of that, too, he might, in fact, at that point be quite flattered, or it would be wonderful to be ill that somebody would carry on his one-man show. I'm sure that some part of him was probably thrilled.
Well, you have to realize, too, Kaye hadn't done the show since 1968, and it had been 25 years since a live performance of Kaye could be seen. And bringing that back to a whole new generation is exciting.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have a bit of tape on Danny Kaye performing, and then we have a little surprise for you from Mr. Kirk McMahon. We're back in a moment. He's going to do it. Okay. We'd like to invite you to come on down and be part of our studio audience. We have some great shows coming up, including singer Murray McLaughlin, who will be on later this week. Also, if you are a chronic dieter, we'll talk about a new program that takes women off diets and helps them get on with their lives. And gentlemen, would you date a woman taller than you? Or ladies, would you date a man who is a lot shorter than you are? We'll be talking about the height of romance. To be a part of any of these shows, call Karen at 299-2370 for your free tickets. Watching and listening to Kirk McMahon brings back memories for most of us of the very famous Danny Kaye. So we're going to take a look at his incredible talent. This is from one of his more famous films called The Court Jester.
They broke the chalice from the palace.
They broke the chalice from the palace?
And replaced it with a flagon.
A flagon?
With a figure of a dragon.
A flagon with a dragon?
Right.
But did you put the pellet with the poison in the vessel with the pestle?
No. The pellet with the poison's in the flagon with the dragon. The vessel with the pestle has the brew that is true.
The pellet with the poison's in the flagon with the dragon. The vessel with the pestle has the brew that is true.
Just remember that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, now one of the other things that Danny Kaye did, and this is our little surprise, you'll remember this, the, I don't know what to call it with all the names. The 38-second wonder.
Oh, yes.
What's it called?
It's called Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky. Do you remember this?
Okay, there's Maliszewski, Rubinstein, Averensky, and Tchaikovsky, Sepelnikov, Dmitriev, Cherepin, Krzyzanowski, Godelsky, Artibuchev, Maniusko, Akimenko, Soloviev, Prokofiev, Tiemkin, Koroshenko. There's Glinka, Rickler, Bortniansky, Rebekov, Liinsky. There's Metner, Balakirev, Solotorov, and Koltinsky, and Sokolov, and Kopolov, Tukowski, and Konovsky, and Shostakovich, Borodin, Gliad, and Novokovsky. There's Ledenov, and Karganov, Makeyevich, Penchenko, and Dagominsky, Chebachev, Skriabin, Vasilenko, Stravinsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, Mazovsky, and Gorchanov, and Glazanov, and Sizekwi, Kalidnikov, Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, and Gorchanov, Rashimsky, and Rachmaninoff. I really have to stop. You have all of undergone enough. Stravinsky, Gorchanov, Rashimsky, Rachmaninoff. I really have to stop because you all have undergone enough.
Yeah. Wonderful. Woo. Good, right. Danny Kaye went off to conduct orchestras, stopped performing in 1965?
68.
68. Did not read music.
No.
Conducted orchestras. Well, how did he do it?
Well, it's...
Here, just follow this, you know.
Back in about 1963, he was approached by a conductor, and he said, you know, we want you to do this benefit performance. And Kaye reacted the same way that I did, because I'm going to get a chance to conduct 5 symphony orchestras in Canada, like Kaye did in this comic conducting. And I don't know how to read music, and I don't know how to conduct. But what happens is, because the Kaye persona and Kaye has such a talent for just watching a conductor and then making fun of it. And that's where it came from. And he had this ear. He had a perfect pitch, and he had this ear for music. He'd hear it once, and it was memorized. And so he could conduct from memory.
Where are you traveling in Canada before you go to the States?
We're going to be finishing up our Ontario tour this year. We're going to be out in Jackson Point. Of course, we're at Markham this week. And we're going out to Saskatchewan to tour there for about 5 weeks.
And then to the United States.
And then off into the United States in '92 to probably perform for about 5 years.
You spent 2 years. It took you 2 years from the time you decided to become Danny Kaye to impersonate him, his mannerisms, his voice. It took you 2 years of study?
Yes, 2 years full-time, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
That's an incredible commitment to make.
Yeah, and, you know, I was working with scat singing coaches, jazz scat singing coaches, dance coaches, voice coaches. You had to learn his entire vocal range, which is 4 octaves. You had to learn how to do 52 Russian composers in 38 seconds. You had to do what was something that was called gibberish back then, which is that kind of stuff.
What is that? It's just gibberish.
It's just, yeah, it's gibberish. It's English. It's like Chinese gibberish. You know, it sounds like it, but it doesn't say anything. But what Kaye did was he took it and created it and made it something very special. He would tell entire stories to audiences and to children, and they would understand exactly what he was saying, even though it was just gibberish.
The Little Rabbit is something that he had for kids. He loved children. He was really big on kids.
Yes. Ever since his work with, Kaye, I think he always had a special place in his heart for children, but especially when he began touring for UNICEF and he saw the starving children, he got that extra commitment and really spent the rest of his life working for UNICEF. Because
you spent 2 years doing this to become him, I'm not sure, do you know why you decided to do this? Or did it just seem like a good idea at the time?
Well, it seemed like a really good idea at the time. It excited me. It made, I was very passionate about the idea.
Great challenge?
It was a good challenge because to be an entertainer, you really have to have all of those skills down pat.
Two last questions. One, do you ever get lost in a character? Do you ever find that you've spent so long becoming this thing that his mannerisms and his characteristics you tend to take on as your own?
Yes, for about a year and a couple of months into, like the training was finished and the show was starting, I drove everyone around me totally nuts because I was so obsessed. My shoe size was the same, my height was the same, my hair color was the same, my eye color was the same. Everything reminded me of Kaye. Oh, look, here's an agreement. I'm supposed to be doing the Kaye show because, you know, he died on my birthday. I mean, it was like...
There's a fine line here. You're starting to get a little close to the edge.
Yeah.
So you had to really pull yourself back and say, slow down.
Yes, I have, as an actor, you have whole techniques to separate yourself from the character.
Okay, now here's my last question. Have you taken, I mean, you learned everything that he has done, but you've also learned his talent, his ability, and you're an actor. Have you taken that and gone on to create new Danny Kaye things? Are there?
That's the biggest challenge, is to take new material, to take modern topical material, and to do it as Kaye would do it if he was still alive. And that's our next project.
How extraordinary. Do you think you go through the rest of... No, I lied. This is one more question. Do you think you go through the... I mean, I was just wondering if maybe in a year you'll see somebody else and you go, I'm going to do him next. Or do you think you'd eventually like to give this up and go back to you? Or do you see yourself continuing with this on a long term?
I think, I honestly believe it's going to be become one of these Yul Brynner things, and I'm going to be known as the guy who has done Kaye for 45 years, you know. And it's...
Boy, did somebody do Yul Brynner for 45 years?
Well, no, Yul Brynner, King and I. I mean, he was so...
So you become the guy who did Danny Kaye for 45 years?
I think so.
Okay. Really interesting, really fascinating. The show is in Ontario. It is called Shaking Like a Leaf. Wherever you see it, it's Danny Kaye, and it's heading off to Saskatchewan and other places in Canada.
And it's in Markham Tuesday through Saturday of this week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Danny. Coming up next, why are more men committing suicide than women? We'll try to find out when we come back.